Welcome to Friday's edition of Renew Plus. I'm Pastor Tony. Thank you for joining us again today at the end of the week. And we're in the middle of our series entitled Faith Life. In fact, we're talking about the operation of faith, how faith works. And of course, like we said before, the door of faith swings primarily on two hinges. First of all, and primarily, believing in the heart. But you know what? You could have faith in your heart. You could believe in your heart, and it never affect any change in your natural life if it does not have expression. So the second key element, or the second hinge we could say, on which the door of faith operates or swings, is by speaking the word primarily. Of course, that could also involve, like we said, other corresponding actions as well, but it at least requires words to be spoken out of the mouth, words of faith coming out of our heart. Now, again, this is kind of a hard thing for a lot of people, even Christians, to grasp, just like me, because we often think, we've been trained since, we were knee-high, that really words are insignificant. Words really don't mean a whole lot. Well, not according to God's economy, because according to the way God operates, words mean everything. And we found out yesterday how God used His faith to frame the worlds, how He used His faith to create all the things that we see around us. And we saw over and over again in Genesis chapter 1 how God said, and then it was. It wasn't, that God, it was, and then God, hey, look at that. No, God said it, and then it was. It did not materialize until God spoke words of faith out of His mouth. Now, we're going to go back over to Mark chapter 11 real quick, just to start this particular lesson today at the end of the week. But this is going to carry over into next week, because we're going to see specific incidences in Jesus' life and ministry, and those who receive from God through Jesus' ministry, on how this principle operated. Now, in Mark chapter 11, verse 22, it says, "So Jesus answered and said to them, have faith in God." Or we can again say, have the faith of God, have the God kind of faith. Then he tells us how this God kind of faith operates. Verse 23, "For assuredly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that those things which he says will be done, he will have whatever he says." Whosoever will have whatsoever they say when they believe it in their heart and then say it out of their mouth. Now I want you to see there that the words of faith speak like this, and it's just the way we pointed out yesterday from Genesis 1, the way God expressed those words of faith. He said, "Light be," and light was. I want you to see there that one word "be" there, so powerful, so important right there, carries so much weight to it. He tells us when we're using the God kind of faith, such as if we want something removed in our life, then we say to the mountain, or we say to the problem, we say to the situation, "Be removed and be cast into the sea," and it will be just as we say it. Just like God did, we, just like being created in the likeness and the image of God, with the measure of the God kind of faith on the inside of us, it operates the same way it did with God. And God said, "Light be," and it was. This, waters be, and it was. Birds be, and it was. Fish be, and it was. Notice that we can use the same thing. Now again, verse 23 is talking about using our authority, our God-given authority as believers in this realm. And that authority that God gives us is just going to lie dormant until we mix faith with it, until we operate it according to the way faith works, which is by believing in the heart and saying with the mouth, expressing words of faith, releasing words of faith out of our mouth. And you know what? If you don't like the things that are going on in your life, you can use the God kind of faith to get supernatural results. That's what Jesus is telling us. Now let's see how this operates. And again, we'll just start this today and then carry it over into next week, because I think it's very important enough that we go through the study of Jesus' life and ministry, see how this God kind of faith works. And we'll see these elements over and over again. So let's go to Matthew's Gospel, chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8, and we're going to begin reading with verse number 5. Gospel of Matthew chapter 8, beginning with verse number 5 and reading on down. Verse 5, it reads, "Now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, pleading with him." Now, centurion was basically a Roman commanding soldier. He had command or authority over 100 other soldiers. So he said, this centurion came to Jesus, pleading with him, saying, "Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed, dreadfully tormented." Now, his servant obviously meant something, meant quite a deal to this centurion. And, him being able to serve was probably important as well. But notice that he came to Jesus and spoke words to him. In verse number 7, "And Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him." This is Jesus' purpose and intent, to come and heal his servant. But then in verse 8, "Then the centurion answered and said to him, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word, and my servant will be healed." Verse 9, "For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it." Boy, I'll tell you, this Roman centurion, now he was an outsider. He was not under the covenants of Israel at this time, but boy, did he have some understanding that caused him to excel in faith. I want you to see that Jesus said, "I'm going to come with you and I'll heal your servant," just like he asked him to. But then this centurion said, "I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof." Now, first of all, I want you to see that his own lack of personal worthiness, his own personal qualification for the blessing, was not driving his faith. In fact, in spite of his own lack of worthiness and qualification to have Jesus come and do this, he still knew that Jesus could and would heal his servant. And then notice right here, he says, you don't need to come under my roof. You don't have to come to my house. You don't have to bother yourself to come to my house. He said, but only speak a word. Notice that this centurion understood the significance of words, spoken words. He knew that when Jesus spoke a word of authority, a word of faith, that his servant would be healed, whether he came and, laid hands on him or did anything else or even came into his house or not. He said in verse 9, "For I am also a man under authority. I have soldiers under me, and I say to this one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it." Now, what gave him the understanding, or what gave him the idea that Jesus could just speak a word right where he was without coming into his house, without coming in physical contact with his servant, and just speak a word of faith, a word of authority, and his servant will be healed? Because he understood as a man under authority. He said, I have soldiers under me. He had 100 soldiers under him. And he said, all I have to do is tell them, come, and they come. Go, and they go. Do this, and they do it. So notice that he understood the significance of words, and that his authority operated according to the words of faith spoken out of his mouth. That Jesus operated the same way, under the same kind of a spiritual authority as he did with those 100 soldiers under him. And so, verse 10, Jesus heard it and marveled and said to those who followed, "Surely I say to you, I have not found such great faith, no, not in Israel. And I say to you that there are many who come from the east and west, sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." But verse 13 is what I want to get to. "Then Jesus said to the centurion, Go your way, and as you have believed, so let it be done for you." In other words, we can say, according, I believe the way Jesus said it here, as you have believed, so be it done for you. So be it done for you. That word "be" is right there again. Those words of faith and authority are released. Now notice it hinged really on what this centurion believed. But Jesus said, as you have believed, so be it unto you. Jesus spoke those words of authority that worked in conjunction with this centurion's faith. And then it goes on to say, and his servant was healed that same hour. Now, how did changes come? Now, Jesus didn't ever go under the man's roof. He never physically came in contact with his servant. He simply released words of faith that worked in conjunction with, in cooperation with this man's own faith. And this man got the desired results because, first of all, he believed in his heart. Second of all, Jesus released words out of his mouth. Boy, I tell you, that story right there is just a prime example to us of how this God kind of faith operates and how it is released. Now let's see another one here before we close for today and this week. Found over in Mark chapter 4, Mark the 4th chapter, Mark chapter 4, and let's look at this real quick. Mark chapter 4. Now this is a story when Jesus had basically done an all-day seminar on how the Word works, and his disciples were there. At the end, he said, let us get into the boat and let us go to the other side. Verse 35, Jesus said to the disciple, let us cross over to the other side. So what was his intent and purpose? Go to the other side, not sink out in the middle. This is words of faith that Jesus released right here. Now, because they really didn't believe the significance of Jesus' words right here, they got in trouble later on. Verse 36 says, now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling up. But he was in the stern asleep on the pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? Now, we've already commented on those verses before, but I want to get to the bottom line here, verse 39. Then Jesus arose and rebuked the wind. Now, how do you rebuke wind? How do you rebuke anything? Rebuke means you're coming against it. How do you rebuke something? Well, it's with words. You speak words against that thing. So that's what Jesus was doing. Jesus arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea. Notice words are involved here. Words of faith are involved in releasing Jesus' authority over this storm. See, Jesus didn't get concerned about this storm because he knew he had authority of it. He knew he could change it. But listen, his faith had to give expression to that authority that he had. Now notice what Jesus said to the sea. He said, peace, be still. There's that one word, be, again. Very powerful two-letter word. He said, peace, be still, and the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Notice that this would never have happened had Jesus not expressed words of faith spoken out of his mouth. Words of authority, commanding words of authority. Now notice his disciples were just trying to bail water out. They forgot what Jesus had said, let us cross over to the other side. You know, they kind of lost sight of that, and I guess they maybe thought, well, Jesus said, let us go halfway out in the middle of the boat, and we're going to get hit by a windstorm, we're going to sink. No, Jesus said, let us cross over to the other side. We're going to the other side. So when that windstorm happened, it was trying to hinder or prevent them, just like a mountain being our way, a hindrance being our way, something undesirable in our way. Jesus didn't get up and say, well, why didn't you wake me early and I could have helped you bail, or, before it got to this point, and Jesus started bailing out. Notice that Jesus simply spoke words, okay? Peace, be still. The wind ceased, there was a great calm, and then he said to them, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? There is no faith expressed on their part whatsoever. They didn't do what Jesus did. In fact, Jesus is really telling them right here, you could have done the same thing that I did and left me asleep on that pillow, okay? I could have got a full night's sleep while we were crossing over to the other side. See, if this were just for just kind of a professional divinity trick alone, Jesus would have said, I know you couldn't do that. You had to wake me up and I had to rebuke it. You couldn't have done that. But Jesus is all over them right there. He said, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? They could have done the same thing. And so they feared exceedingly and said to one another, who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him? Now notice that the wind and sea obeyed what? They obeyed Jesus' words of faith coming out of his mouth. And see, we can all do that. It's not just the disciple trick, not just the divinity trick. We have the God kind of faith. We can operate in the same manner, in the same way, and get the same God kind of results that Jesus did. Again, a powerful way to end our week. We're going to have some more stories at the beginning of next week as we go through this. You're going to see this over and over again by illustration. Well, that's all the time I've got for today and this week. If you'd like additional resources, materials, and information, go to tonycowan.org, and we will see you next week.